Mike Madigan pleading not guilty in federal court yesterday, and it was an interesting hearing. One done over phone. Madigan didn't say a word, but his co-defendant, Michael McLean, did, even though the judge was like, you don't have to say anything. And McLean had some problems getting onto the phone, but at the tail end, he said, I apologize. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something like he's not technically advantaged, and thanked the prosecutors and the government and the courts for their patience. But Madigan pleading not guilty. What ultimately does this mean? I'll share with you some of the conversation I had with a corruption expert, David Parker. He's kind of my go-to guy who has watched for years the various ins and outs of all kinds of different types of federal corruption cases, white-collar crime type stuff. But he provides some unique perspective here in as far as how this is going to play out. So we'll watch that and share that with you coming up here. But yesterday, of course, was the day that Madigan was arraigned. And at the Illinois State House, you had this issue of several lawmakers sharing their ideas of what needs to happen next. And also where we're at right now when it comes to Madigan's influence at the State House and the impacts of Madigan's rule. So here is on the House floor yesterday before the actual hearing in federal court where Madigan pleaded not guilty is State Representative Deanna Mazzocchi, and she kind of laid out some of the things that she wants to see happen and that Republicans have been calling for and urging Democrats to get on board with a variety of different types of ethics reforms. So here is State Representative Deanna Mazzocchi sharing some of those thoughts.
You want to end the corrupt quid pro quo with zoning? You can start by ending aldermanic privilege. Here's another issue raised by federal indictments and guilty pleas: red light cameras. The last time this chamber voted to end red light cameras, Mike Madigan played a shell game with the Senate so that you could all tell the people back home you voted against red light cameras, while no bill actually stopping them managed to pass. HB 4102 gives the people at home some relief. They don't have to pay if the camera was tainted with public corruption. Not a single Democrat is apparently interested in that bill. How about HB 2929? That legislation says that you can't use your campaign funds to defend yourself in a civil corruption case or a criminal case. It got assigned to a committee, and the Democratic chairman refused to let it come forward for a vote. I ask everyone in this chamber to join me in standing for real reform and ending practices that have brought massive corruption and scandal to our state. Today should be a new day, but let's disband the old ways that have given political insiders all of this power and privilege and personal gain for a select few at the expense of the people of Illinois. Those on the other side of the aisle, I'd like to ask you to join these bills as a co-sponsor. You're not even actually paying attention, you're just chattering amongst themselves, which is probably, again, part of the problem we see in Illinois. But if you want to be a real voice and a real vote for change, I urge you to do so and sign on to some of these bills, because otherwise you are status quo for the quid pro quo.
Again, that's State Representative Deanna Mazzocchi sharing some of her thoughts just before Madigan was to go into the federal arraignment on 22 counts of racketeering, bribery, and extortion. These types of things are federal crimes, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the different charges here that are against Madigan and Mike McLean that were heard yesterday in federal court via teleconference. But you heard from a Republican saying that there needs to be ethics reforms and criticizing Democrats for not jumping on board. I did connect with one Democrat yesterday, and this particular state representative, Ann Stava Murray from Naperville. She actually, when she got elected being critical of Madigan. So as a Democrat, being critical of the House Speaker and the chair of the Democratic Party at that time, she got into office being critical of Madigan and pledged that she wouldn't support Madigan. So she was actually one that I believe she voted present, if I recall correctly, and I might be wrong on that. But when she got into office, she did not support House Speaker Michael Madigan to be the Speaker of the House. And in previous conversations with her, she had serious problems about the cloud of harassment that was alleged and ultimately uncovered within the speaker's office at that time during the Me Too movement. So that was a big red flag for her, and that just seemed to be a tip of the iceberg. And chatting with her yesterday before Madigan pleaded not guilty in federal court, she said that she's actually grateful for the stand that she took, because ultimately it led to Madigan being deposed from power. And her opposition to him snowballed with 18 others that signed on to not support Madigan in 2021 to be speaker. And the outcome, she says, is important, because think about if he was still in office. From the get-go.
You know, I just think of how much worse it could have been if we had sat back and done nothing. Because imagine that scenario where he's still the speaker, and what kind of circus would have gone down, and how the people's work would have been interrupted and impacted. And I'm just glad we were able to avoid that. So whatever circus there is in store, which I'm sure there will be for us, it's not as bad as what we could have avoided. So I did whatever part I could do in making this be a stronger year for Democrats. There are many of us who are ethical, serving our state, just trying to be good public servants.
So again, that's State Representative Ann Stava-Murray, a Democrat from Naperville area, and some of the thoughts that she's had. Now, Madigan then, he goes into the phone conference where members of the media were listening in, and ultimately Madigan pleading not guilty. And Mike McLean also pleading not guilty, and federal prosecutors, they laid out the 22 different charges ranging from 5 years prison time to 20 years prison time, $250,000 fines, and so on. Madigan, who turns 80 next month, pleaded not guilty to the charges. I connected with David Parker from St. Xavier University to get his take on what exactly all of this means and just how long of a trial this could be. And he lays out there some insights into what exactly is going to happen, especially now that Madigan entered his plea in federal courts.
I mean, Madigan's pled, not guilty. He's saying the charges against him are baseless. That I think there was a statement that the government's basically attempting to criminalize something that's just routine, and it's just okay. All I was doing is making job recommendations. It's a constituent service. It doesn't look like prosecution's offering anything that's going to make him change his mind. So it's going to be a waiting game, but I could see this going for years.
So we'll see a long, protracted case here. But Parker says that the feds have laid out some pretty compelling evidence thus far.
So, but I think they've laid a great foundation, and so. I don't know, but it's going to be lengthy. I mean, it sounds like he's in it for the long haul, and he's going to play kind of a game of who blinked first. I mean, he's very cagey. We've had the conversation go again. He's been very, very careful, very shrewd. I mean, he has really done a good job with insulating himself. And so I think there may be a solace. I think there may be some tape recordings going on. So, again, that could be part of the discovery with what the prosecution has and all to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be a long haul game. I don't think anybody's been surprised.
Yeah, well, we'll see just how long it goes. But if indeed this does get to trial, Parker says the defense, even though it's high priced, they got 5 attorneys there and a lot of political dollars behind it. It's going to be a tough defense to mount with the evidence, at least, that the feds are hinting that they have.
I don't know that a jury's going to really buy into is this. I was just doing constituents a favor. I mean, if you look at the account, there's accusations of threats of intimidation, extortion to solicit benefits from private parties. There was actual and threatened fear of economic harm by these parties. I mean, you either go along with it or you run the risk. So with anybody who has that type of power and influence, a lot of people are going to cave in. So, you got to take a step back and, both sides say, okay, if this really goes to a jury with what we think the evidence is going to be is where would the average person go with it? It go either way. But I mean, that's what you have to ask yourself, especially in Madigan's case. If this gets to a jury, are they really going to believe that all I was doing is constituent service and making some job recommendations with no quid pro quo?
So the next hearing in the case, April 1st. We'll see whether the feds move this
I don't know that the
forward
jury's gonna.
or what exactly is going to happen here. So we'll keep you posted on all the latest here on WMAY. I'm Greg Bishop. Get a hold of me, bishoponair@gmail.com.